Hello there, friends and sane persons, and welcome to another episode of Wednesday Whimsy. My name is Kyle, and Wednesday Whimsy is a short show that I do every Wednesday evening where I talk about a board game, a top 10 list, some other board game related topic, and lately I've been clearing the queue of long campaign games, big heavy games that take up a lot of time and a lot of space, and this week is no exception. This week I'm going to talk about something that kind of, again, invaded my life, took over my table, and that I have been playing a lot of in the last little while, and that is The Elder Scrolls Betrayal of the Second Era. Now, this is just the lid. The real box it's got to be at least 20 pounds, and it's like, this big. It's this huge cube. It is a huge and heavy game, and it's one that's based upon a video game franchise. I think Skyrim is the main one in there, but I guess there's probably others because I know there's other places in this game you can go to. In fact, I've never visited Skyrim in this game, even though I can see that it's available. Anyway, that's more for that later. Let's talk a little bit about the game. I'll tell you about some of the adventures I've been having lately, and then I'll give you my thoughts. So let's go. So first, what is it about? Well, you're in some kind of a fantasy land, and you are some kind of a fantasy character. And I'm a little vague there, but that's because you can sort of choose and customize your character. And you are kind of going through, and it's a 3-session quest. It's a campaign of sorts, but it's only a 3-game campaign. So you'll play a game. You could put it away, or you can keep it out and play again, and then you'll do a third one. And ultimately, the first one you choose is going to be very open-ended. You can pick one of any number of things. Then, based upon what you do in that quest, you're going to have usually 2 or 3 choices for quest 2, and then those will kind of pigeonhole you into quest 3, which is going to be in the same region where you had quest 2. At least so far, it's always been that way. And every single game so far, you come across some sort of a wood elf named Deslandra, and she's doing something terrible. And then you're going to find her and take her down in a great big final battle. And she'll have different versions based upon where she is. I've fought her as a lich. I've fought her as some sort of as the curse breaker. I've fought her as, there's a variety of different versions of Deslandra that you can come across. And I don't know, maybe she's someone from the video game. I don't know, but she's a bad girl. And, and you've got to put her in her place. Anyway, if you successfully complete all 3 sessions, then you win. If you fail to complete any one of the 3 sessions, then you lose, and you're supposed to start over. And that's kind of how it goes. In one session, again, one sort of sit down and play, one play of the game is going to be one, essentially, quest, start to finish. So with that, let's talk a little bit about how the game works. Now, I would be remiss to to discuss the game without mentioning sort of the most interesting part of it, which is this character selection. And so the first kind of thing you're going to do when you set up the game is you're going to pick a character. Now, there's a couple of ways to do it. There's sort of this escape from jail scenario that you kind of play through once and maybe not again, but and that will help you kind of narrow down the choices. Or you can kind of pick, which character sounds the most interesting. And a character is going to be composed of, we can kind of zoom in here. You can see it's not a small game by any means. If I can zoom in, I guess I can't go farther than that. But over here, you're going to have this character stat sheet, and then you're going to have a race, which will give you kind of your base stats and one special ability. And then you're going to choose a class, and there's, 15 or so classes. There's maybe 10 different races, 15 different classes. And so this class is going to be all of your different special abilities. And kind of, if you've played a game called Too Many Bones that this is heavily based on, it's what you'd call your backup plan. And then you've got this clash map where you're going to do most of your kind of maneuvering and fighting, and there are decks of cards that are going to govern the various adventures that you have. And sort of the hallmark of the game is this character creation mechanism, And I wish I could find a good picture of it, kind of a zoomed in one. Well, maybe this one will zoom in. I guess it zoomed in a little bit more. Oh, there we go. So yeah, here we kind of have, you'll see this character has chosen a two-handed special ability or skill line and a heavy armor skill line, and their character is an Imperial Knight. And so the knight gives, they're going to have their stats from this. The 5 health is starting, 2 starting stamina, 2 starting magicka. I don't know why they don't call it just magic. 2 combat dice that they get, and their cooldown is 2. And, ultimately, you're largely going to be, most of the game is going to be played in these battles. And the battles are kind of the core mechanism of the game. And what you're going to do each turn is you're going to start your turn, and then you're going to select a form. And there's 5 different battle forms. There's a magic battle form, ranged, light weapon, heavy weapon, and arm or defensive, something like that. Defensive battle stance. And different abilities and dice that you want to roll require different stats. So for example, two-handed requires you to be in heavy weapon battle stance, which means that you can only use, if you picked heavy weapon battle stance, you can only use dice that are compatible with that battle stance, either those that come from a heavy weapon sheet, or some that are kind of neutral, like some of your acrobatics and stealth dice are going to be neutral form. You're going to move. You can usually move equal to whatever your stamina value is. And depending on the form you have, for example, two-handed battle stance, you can only target things that are adjacent to you. So you'd come out here onto the map, and I'm sure it's not set up for us. It's not. But here we go. Yeah. No, sorry, I'm kind of zooming around in the zoomed-in picture. So so this character, he might move here, and then he's going to target this enemy. And this enemy has 0 defense, and he would pick a number of dice that he wants to roll. And the number that he can roll is, again, generally, for most of the stances, equal to his stamina. If he's doing a magic battle form, then it's going to be equal to his magic stat. But so you could roll 2 dice. And then you'll roll them, and then you'll apply their effects. Now, combat dice are just going to do damage, or not. And then the others are going to have special effects based upon kind of the skill sheet of the dice. And then you'll subtract life from your target if you're successful, if you do damage in excess of their defense. And if you don't, well, then you won't. There's also a miss side that's going to give you something called tenacity, which is a resource that you can build up and spend on the various actions from your class sheet. And then you'll kind of, you'll play out, there's different battle objectives. For the most part, you just want to kill everybody, but sometimes you're in a dungeon and you want to sort of get to certain places, or sometimes you're in this kind of non-pre-generated dungeon where you're kind of exploring it and you're trying to find sky shards, which is the kind of a resource that's on the cards, and then kind of make it out alive. Anyway, you're going to gain, after you win the battle, or win your encounter, you're going to get some sort of experience points, some amount of experience. Those go onto a group kind of cumulative tracker that's going to make it harder in the future. But you can also spend them to improve your stats. So for example, this character, if he wanted to buy another of these orange dice, he could. It would just cost him 2 experience points, whereas he could buy a health for just 1. And you'll see that on this sheet, the dice kind of come from both sides, meaning that this magic stat is directly interfering with this heavy armor stat. So he might eventually need to untrain some of those magic so that he's able to have more of this heavy armor stat. And that's kind of how it goes. There's an encounter book. There are region gazetteers, which are going to give you the various different quests that you're going to go on and tell you about the encounters you might have. There's lots of decks of cards. There's items, and when you go over one of these item caches, you have to do a little lockpick check, which is a sort of a mini game. You'll pause your turn and you'll roll dice, trying to get the numbers on top of that are written on this card, and you can kind of influence those. The other thing I'd mentioned, though, and it's very important, it's kind of key to the game, is another status, which is the cooldown. And that is because these dice, once you use them, are going to go into this track, and you can't use them again until they've reached the end. And at the start of your turn, you're going to look at your cooldown stat, and you're going to cool down the first whatever number of dice that is. So, for example, this person has a 2 cooldown, and so at the start of his turn, he'd get to take these 2 dice and put them back, which means he can use them again. There's also these gray dice, which are fatigue, and they're useless. All they do is take up space. And then there's over fatigue, which is even worse, because when it would come off, it just goes back to the end and kind of keeps resetting until you find a way to get rid of it. Anyway, you're going to kind of do battles. There's also peaceful encounters and other kind of little quests. You can get side quests, but ultimately you're trying to accomplish one particular goal. And if you accomplish that goal, you win, and you get instructions for your next scenario. And if you don't accomplish the goal, well, you don't win, and you're sad. So there you kind of have it. That's the nutshell version of how this game works. So there is a lot going on here. But let me kind of talk about what makes the game special, and then I'll talk about a couple of the negative aspects of the game. It's not perfect, I'll just say that. What makes it special? Well, that class and character creation is just so much fun. And that is really, I played it my first time, and I was like, that was okay. And then I kind of pulled out the different skill sheets and the different class sheets, and I thought, oh, look at that. That would be interesting, because I just kind of picked one my first time, and it ended up not being a very good combination. It was some sort of a magic, a necromancer that needed magic, but then I had a whole bunch of heavy weapon dice, and it just wasn't mixing very well. And so I was like, well, that was okay. I had an okay time with it. But when I started thinking about, well, what if I tried something different, right? What if I tried a magic character where I invested heavily in the magic stats? Hey, there's an idea. And I thought, oh, well, I'll go back and try that. And so I set it up again, and I kind of started a new quest, and I had a much better time, right? Because once you sort of start tinkering with that, it opens up lots of possibilities. Honestly, this game is a lot like a game called Too Many Bones, and I'll talk about that a little bit more in the final rating. But in Too Many Bones, you sort of had a character that was predetermined, and it had sort of skill lines and custom dice you could upgrade and unlock as you progressed, but you were stuck with that character. There was no way really to customize it other than sort of the upgrade path that you chose. No longer is that the case. Here you can do anything you want. You can have like the last game I played with my friend Victor, and he was an archer, and he went heavily into archer, and his goal was to stay in the back. And so I said, well, I was an orc, and I was going to go in with sword and shield, and then I invested heavily in that heavy armor stat. And so really what I would do was charge out, and then I would stand there next to all the enemies, distracting them, and they would hit me, but it wouldn't faze me because I had so much armor on. And so then he could kind of do all the damage, pinging them from the back, while I really held their attention, being right next to them. And it was a good combo, right? It was good teamwork. There was a lot of good teamwork there. But it was fun that I could do that, and that he could do that, and that we could really just kind of customize those characters. That is so much fun. And honestly, as I sort of sit thinking about the game, I think, ooh, what if I tried a different class? And what if I tried different dice? And it's just a lot of fun. Another thing that makes it special, the combat, right? The combat here is very simple, but because you have that kind of character that you've built, you can feel very invested in it. It's dice-based combat, but most of the dice have hits on lots of their sides. And most of the dice, other than the kind of boring white dice, have special abilities that you're going to be trying to manage. And sort of, it's very interesting to kind of try and find an exploit in this combat. And all these enemies have horrible special abilities that they're going to use to annoy you. And they have armor that you have to get through every single time you attack them. And that's horribly annoying. But the combat is fun because you figure out your way around that. And there's just a lot to explore here. And the component quality here is excellent. Chip Theory Games, that's the publisher, they're known for excellent component quality. All of the player boards are these neoprene mats. That's kind of one of their things. And then they have these stacks of chips. That's kind of their hallmark is when you put your character on the map, they're going to have a stack of these red health chips under them, and that kind of represents their life. And it's kind of fun, right? Because you can see what's a big enemy, because it's going to be a huge stack of chips. Or a small wimpy guy. You can kind of visually see as they go down, and it's fun, right? But they're heavy weighted poker chips. I believe they're mostly magnetic. There's nothing really that feels cheap about this game, which is good because it's not. Also, all of the cards are printed on plastic. They want the game to be waterproof. I have a personal testament that while waterproof, it's not mold proof. So you have to be careful with that. But that's with a different game that I had a bad experience with. But this one, it's just very high quality components. The rule books are built to last. In fact, I brought the rule book down here. It's got a nice spiral binding on it, which is good, so you can open it and leave it open on the table without it constantly closing. It's a well thought out, well designed game. Also, the rule book is really good. Now, we'll talk about this in a moment. The rule book is enormous, but it's well organized. There is a great index in here, which is perfect because whenever you need to look something up, it's nice to be able to find where it is. But the index is well thought out. It has so far pretty much everything that I've needed to find. I've been able to find in the index, then find in the rule book. There's lots of really good examples in it. The game also comes with a tutorial book where you can set up 2 characters. It'll tell you what to do, and it will take you through turn by turn, tell you, okay, this person does this, and this is what happens, and this is how it works, and they roll these dice. And you can kind of set it up, play through that, and that will teach you 95% of the game. I mean, really. And then there's the extended tutorial, but you have to download that from their website, which is kind of stupid. I don't know why it's just not all in the book, because it's like they take out a few pieces and put them on the website. Anyway, but it's an easy-ish game to learn, even though there's a lot going on. They really put a lot of effort into making it something that people could get through if they're willing to put in the work. So we've got, and it's just incredibly fun. And all of the quests are different, right? I mentioned that you sort of have these different quests you're doing, but they all feel different. Yeah, you're doing some combination of delves and combats and moving around a map, but each of the maps has its own flavor, and each of the final quests, those sort of end game quests, the sort of day 3 or session 3 quests, are all really fascinating. So far, they've been full of lots of surprises. There was, I don't want to spoil them, but it's been a lot of fun kind of to see, oh, okay, this is an interesting, not puzzle. It's not a puzzle game, but it's an interesting sort of way to manipulate this and let me kind of experiment with and have a good time with it. Also, all of your actions feel meaningful. There's never really a turn that you think that feels wasted. Sometimes, if you've let your cooldown track get totally full and you have a whole bunch of fatigue, yeah, then it can feel like you have a wasted turn. But other than that, it really, you feel like you're doing something every turn, and it's always exciting. Also, the enemies are easy to use. There's no weirdness about, which way do they go. They're lazy, they move as little as possible, and they try and hit as much as possible. And that's it. And there's a nice, 2 player sheets with the special abilities. 2's probably enough, because I don't think I'll ever play this with 4 people. And really only need one person to know what they do so they can kind of run it. But there's a lot really to like about this game. So let's go through and talk about where's the but. Well, first of all, I mentioned we'd talk about the rulebook. And while the rulebook is well written, well organized, it's got colored pictures and examples, and it's easy to use, it's 97 pages. It is a huge rule book. I mean, this is the size of a small novel. You have to sit down and go through. Now, I mentioned that the tutorial will take you through most of it, and you don't necessarily need to read through the rule book, but somebody ultimately will have to. And that's a lot. It's a big ask. This is a game that's based on an IP that I think is still popular, even though the video game came out in 2011. But I think it's probably designed to capture the interest of people who love that kind of Skyrim universe. But if they're not board gamers, they're going to be put off by this rule book. It is just enormous. It's a lot. Again, it's the best version possible of a lot, but it is a lot. Secondly, this game is very expensive. I got it through the Kickstarter / GameFound. I don't remember what I paid for it, but if I went to Chip Theory Games website, we could check and see how much the game costs, but it's going to be $100 to $200. Just the base game. Now I have, there's one expansion right now, and you probably wouldn't need that right away because there's a lot of game here, but it's an expensive game, so this is not going to be the kind of game. It says it's $224.95, which is a real lot to play on a game. Now, will you get your money's worth out of this? If you play this game a few times, yes, right? I've done 10, 12 plays of it, and each of those has been in 2 hours, so I'm 20 hours in, and that's a lot of time to play a game, right? I mean, my cost per play is going down, and I can see myself playing it for another 20 hours easily, but it's a lot. I mean, that's a big investment for somebody just sort of to say, well, I'll give this a go. And because it's not one that you can find anywhere else, it's going to be hard to kind of try before you buy. It's not going to be in many libraries probably. So it's expensive. It's got a huge rule book. And it can be overwhelming, right? The sheer number of options and possibilities will make this game kind of rough. Also, there's lots of special abilities, lots of sort of keywords to learn. If you have played Too Many Bones or other games from this company, you're already familiar with that. But if this is your first time in this company's universe, it's going to be a lot to onboard. Also, this game's really long. I already mentioned, a game's going to be an hour to 2 hours, and close to the two. And that's a long time. And also, it takes up a ton of space. And also, it's best solo or two-player. Actually, I think the best way to play it is going to be two-handed solo. I'm not sure. You're limited in your options with a solo game, just because with a one-character solo, because you got to manage the crowd control, and it's easier to do that if you have two people. So I think two-handed solo, but that might be a lot to ask for people. Or, two-player. Two-player is great. So there's a lot of butts, but they're all well-managed butts, I guess I would say. So we're getting long already, and I apologize for that. I'm going to give you kind of my final rating. I mentioned that I would talk a bit about Too Many Bones. Too Many Bones is a fantastic game. It's a game I love. It's a game I dread playing because, like this one, it's got a huge rule book, although that one's poorly written and kind of a wonky rule book. It's large, takes up a lot of space, takes up a lot of time. It's difficult to set up. It's a heavy box. This one's also a heavy box. But Too Many Bones is a 10 out of 10 for me. I still really like it despite all of its flaws. And this one, Elder Scrolls, also a 10 out of 10. I like it every bit as much. I don't know which one I like better in the long run. Right now, I'm playing Elder Scrolls because it's, new and hot. And I think if expansions come out for this, and I get, a few more character classes and a few more skill dice, I can see myself liking this one even more. It's just so fascinatingly fun. And I just, right now, I'm thinking, I could set it up and play it. And then I think, well, but you've got friends over, right? I still have Victor visiting me, and he'll want to play something else. Even though I think he had a good time with it too, but he doesn't want to just play one game. I'm thinking, as soon as he leaves, maybe I'll set this one up again. And I'm constantly thinking about it. It has been on my mind. I've spent every minute I've not been, well, not every minute, but many minutes I've not been playing this game, thinking about playing it. And that's the sign of a great game. That's the 10 out of 10, right? That's the flavor. That's what you're going for. This may be a better game than Too Many Bones. It may be, and that's just because it's more both structured in some areas and open-ended in others. However, Too Many Bones has so much content for it, and this one is still in its nascent stage. I think if this one gets 4 or 5 expansions with new enemies, new classes, and new characters, it might pass Too Many Bones. It might. I don't know. Right now, Too Many Bones is still a little higher, but they're both in the 10 out of 10 range, and they're games that I recommend if you understand everything that this comes with. Understand that it's expensive. Understand that it's long. Understand that it's heavy. Understand that it's a commitment. Understand that it's going to be difficult to learn. Understand that you're going to want to play it lots of times before you put it away and forget how, because it's so difficult to learn. If you can take all those, this is going to be perfect for you. If you like the Elder Scrolls world, I'm assuming this is a good implementation. I don't have any background there. But for me, as a board game, as a solo player or a two-player game, it is hard to find something better. So 10 out of 10. Definitely try before you buy if you can, just because, of course, it's expensive and probably hard to find. But if this at all sounds interesting, or if you like Too Many Bones, this is going to be the game for you. So there you go. 10 out of 10 for the Elder Scrolls. And that is going to take us to the end of this week's episode of Wednesday Whimsy. I gotta get back to playing games because I've got a big backlog. And I'll probably talk about something else next time. Maybe not a game discussion, but we'll see. I have not decided. Anyway, that's going to be it for this episode. I'm going to wish you safe travels, courage when you need it, and I hope to see you again soon next time on another episode of Wednesday Whimsy. Bye-bye.